All right, so the truck series is done for Speed Week. Once again, it seems like every race weekend at Daytona, we always end up having to have this conversation about something that decision that was made that is questionable at the end of this race. Once again, another questionable decision, whether or not the race was to end on the white flag or on the caution flag or the caution lights. And once again, it leads us to, was that the right call? Um, they ended up wanting more trucks up for really no other reason other than, NASCAR said that this was not a complete race. Obviously, there's footage. There's something that you have to decide whether or not that was the right decision or not. Zane Smith ends up winning. He was going to win the previous event if it had finished when it was going to originally. I'm a little bummed. Our man Jason White, Canadian, was in 10th place. He was up actually into 9th place on the restart. And because they restarted, unfortunately, he ended up with a wrecked truck after Matty D bumped him and he slid up into Chris Wright, and they were basically along for the ride. This is a typical race at Daytona now. It is a typical event, what we normally see, which is a pretty tame first little bit, and then once again it goes single file for a good chunk of it, and then it goes to the end, which is unfortunately just a bit of a wreck fest. It took out a lot of the big, competitive trucks. But once again, I think we can say that, the Daytona races really don't show us who is actually going to be the best of the best here this year. It really does come down to the draft. It is remarkable that they had as many trucks survive as they ended up doing. I mean, it was not reasonable to think that many trucks were going to survive based off of the past records. But a very kind of, it felt like there was new blood. Which was really exciting. You had Ankrum up at the front in the 16. You had somebody who I wasn't expecting to see it there, Colby Howard in the 91 for BMR, Hilgman, I think it is, which was great to see that, especially for a team that's expanded. That team, BMR, looked pretty impressive last year with Derek Kraus. Haley Deegan had a moment where she was up there looking, decent. And we're going to bring in Graydon Bunn here, who's joining me, and we'll see kind of his thoughts on it, because it is something that, we kind of talk at length about these Daytona races, is they are not always the most fun to watch. And I don't know, Graydon. I'm not sure how I feel about this one, because it's what we've seen the last couple of years, where it's just, let's try to survive until the last couple laps, and then let's just act like. Now, I'm not going to say it was bad. I think the action was actually really good. There was a lot of really close saves throughout the entire race. Yep. But again, I kind of feel they made the bad call with the restarting the race. I kind of feel like Zane won that, and I know they showed the light, they showed the white flag, but I don't remember if I thought that the idea was if the white flag flew, that ended the race. But they're saying on the broadcast that no, it's when the caution lights come out that determined why this race continued, because it was out before they crossed the line, which to me is so much more confusing.
I think it's a huge mixed message that what we've come to understand as the policy isn't quite as we understand it, I guess.
Why do we have a flagman?
Yeah,
Like, what's the point of
exactly.
having a
Like the
flagman
flag
then?
man is just like a symbol, basically, is what they're saying, really, because scoring loops and caution lights take care of everything, essentially, is what they're saying. Um, and my, I kind of feel the same way. It's the race is pretty much the same as it typically has been. I, the boys and I, like, the boys called that out. Owen called it. Like, why did they even restart that? Why didn't they just end it how it played out? Like,
And I get pissed off when you do that, and then you've got our man Jason White
yeah, I was
driving.
just gonna say, Jason tore up his
In the,
truck. It like lasted the whole
well,
damn thing.
well, who was behind him? Who hit him? Matty D.
Yeah,
And just because of everything that Matt's done the last couple of years, I'm not particularly a fan of him. But that would have all been avoided. And now you got a small team like that that's got a destroyed truck now because they decided they had to run this race again. It's like with ARCA, and they've done that in the past where ARCA has had a one lap shootout on a like there's no need for it. You know, I
I
understand, but that they're trying to do this for the I guess they're doing this for the fans.
it comes back. I Tony Stewart said at one time in one of his interviews that they should put like a figure eight or a loop
We're
in
not
it or
wrecking enough.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because
Yeah.
it feels like when they do that, it does feel like that's what they're like. They want to re-rack them again just to see if it'll happen again. Like you had pretty much an organic finish in the making right there. Just let it be. I mean,
I don't somehow it
and
was a good Martin Roberg on Twitter had is Michael Massey at NASCAR now. I thought that was really funny because it's the same type of why we're coming down to a finish once again that is controversial in NASCAR when it doesn't need to be. I mean,
I mean, the job listings can only be so big for a guy of those qualifications. Maybe there's a classified out for NASCAR.
well,
Who knows?
and I think that this was a pretty strong effort for some guys. I think Thorsport once again is going to be your top contenders with KBM this year. I think you're going to see a step back from GMS because let's be honest, the Grant is great, but Jack Wood he's not going to light the team on fire here. That's just not going to happen. But that BMR team with Colby Howard, I was pleasantly surprised how competitive he was for most of this race for a guy that really didn't have a lot of he doesn't have a lot of history
No,
in the series and JD Motorsports. I mean, we've said it before. JD Motorsports has a very good track record of getting young drivers into their team, giving them a bit of time, and then they move on to bigger and better things. Obviously, Landon Castle, Ross Chastain being some of those drivers. And Colby seems to be like a guy again that I think this is a good fit for him. You know, I think a young team in BMR Hildman is promising because BMR was one of the top teams in ARCA West for years.
yeah,
Years. And they looked extremely impressive right off the top of this. Tyler Ankrum, I slept on him. I think he's going to be pretty good. That seems like it's a pretty good fit. But overall, is this truck race too long, Graydon?
I think a case could be made to make it more of a sprint race than it is. I mean, any race has a beginning, middle, and end, but maybe the middle is too drawn out for. I mean, the whole animal of super speedway racing, I mean, needs to be sort of looked at. I mean, we talk about this every year. Like, there's a faction of fans that live for Daytona, and we're excited to see the season fire up, and you get all those feelings of the first races of the year. And there's nothing that replaces that. And Daytona goes hand in hand with that for a lot of us. But at the same time, the product of the racing, I mean, maybe it does. I mean, you're probably going to have those wrecks at the end regardless of the length of the race, but maybe we just don't need to drag it out quite as much, like 100 lapper or 75 lapper or something. And ticket holders aren't going to want to hear that either, though. Like, they're not going to want to see less mileage in a race.
I think about this and how many events for the truck series of the past couple of years do we end with over 20 trucks wrecked?
Yeah, like I don't know what the fix is for this, but like we wait all off season long to see the same thing every February.
And that's the thing. I think I almost feel that this is what we come to expect every year. Now, I get that that's what they kind of want, but I would not be opposed to seeing the trucks not do a truck race at Daytona next year. You know, if they go to New Smyrna or they go to Five Flags, I don't understand. I don't know if that's realistic, but just something different. We have to remember that these teams are not cup teams. They're not full of that huge money. And
trucks weren't born on the super speedways either.
No. And then they start off their season with completely destroyed trucks. Obviously, same thing with, you can say with Xfinity and with Cup, but I just think for a development series, which it is supposed to be, I just look at this and go, I don't like how many vehicles and how much money they destroy right off the start of the season. It's not realistic and good for budgets to, you know, destroy a truck so quickly. And if you have a team, like I said, like the Rayon brothers with Thad and Jason was fine until that last lap.
Yeah,
and
like made it the whole scheduled distance,
and he had survived
without a scratch on it on our buddy's beautiful paint scheme.
Beautiful paint scheme by Davin, and Davin, I'm glad got to experience that and see his truck.
Yeah, those pictures of him, with
so
his
cool.
paint scheme, seeing your baby in real life, man, that's got to be awesome. Yeah, huge shout out to Davin.
And definitely to Rayon brothers, because on the speed chart, they were awful. They did not belong in this race. They were so bad. And both Thad and Jason had gotten up to about 19th, but Thad was in the top 10 for a little bit, which is better than he had ever done in ARCA. And he rode that 43 truck until that big wreck happened. And this was a very good start for some of the new names. I think what it definitely felt like was there was new blood.
Yes.
You know, Sauter was not a factor. That team said that on Twitter that they were going to replace the battery. But as far as I know, you don't need to replace the battery in the garage. So I'm not sure what happened there, but he wasn't really a factor. Matt Crafton was never really a factor. So this was essentially some of that new blood. Obviously, you don't have Sheldon Creed in there. And for the most of the race, Austin Hill wasn't really into it. Grant Enfinger never really led. This feels like it's Ben Rhodes that's going to be Zane Smith, John Hunter Nemechek. They seem like they're going to be, maybe even Tyler Ankrum, I would argue, that they're going to be a very hard, difficult force to be reckoned with. And Michael Waltrip would not stop with the Matt DiBenedetto being in the championship for the entire night, but they've got work to do if that's what is going to happen, because the WAR truck was not good. Jason was outrunning him most of the race.
Yes, he was. He was in front of him the whole damn time. He was in front of him the whole
race and barely got that top 10. I said, if he didn't push Jason out of the way in that last little bit, he wouldn't have gotten the top 10.
And I think Michael wanted to kind of beat the drum to show that DiBenedetto's still in the NASCAR National Series. But I mean, it's not like, what has DiBenedetto done to prove that that's going to take that back marker? Let's be honest, that truck is not a championship truck. No. Even before DiBenedetto got in it. How is he going to elevate? He may elevate that game, but he's not going to take them to a championship winning. Especially, you're not going to see that in one race. And
not with that performance. With that performance. No.
Yeah.
That wasn't. I don't know, man. Listen. I'm going to set all the crazy shit that he said and done, and some of the stuff that we don't agree with, and just look at it, evaluating it directly from his performance.
Yeah, just race
today. and it just didn't come across as somebody that has been in the Cup Series. Michael said, he's coming down, he's going to use everything that he learned. And I kept thinking, well, what
Yeah.
exactly is it that he's done that's going to warrant him to be a championship four? Now, obviously, he's got that championship material because he's in a series that anybody can really get into it. I think that they talked about it earlier. This is probably the deepest truck field in a long time. Like it feels so stacked. And then I didn't even consider, when we were talking about this, those guys that weren't even in the conversation, like I mentioned, Grant Enfinger, like I mentioned, Stuart Friesen, like they weren't even in the lead. And those are still guys that could potentially be in that final four. So
yeah, Friesen ran great. He had a good race.
It feels like this Xfinity and trucks once again are going to be the series to watch. I think the fact that we got to see names like Jesse Little, Spencer Boyd was up in the top 10 for Young's Motor. Like this really feels like that spec engine, that spec everything has it has leveled the playing field just a little bit in terms of the racing. What we really need to look for though is the next race, right? This is always what we say about Daytona. Daytona is kind of a throwaway, but for you, to me, obviously Todd Gilliland is good, but Zane Smith in this 38, I think is going to be lethal. I think that that team was looking so good last year with Todd Gilliland. They had a lot of bad luck, but Zane Smith to me performs a lot better than Todd Gilliland did. So it bodes very well. And they're already going to be in the championship battle with that 38. And I kind of love that for them, because a team that isn't the top of the line in the Cup Series, and now they could potentially fight for a championship. I love that. I think that's
I
so
feel
cool.
like they're almost like a little bit of a throwback of what the series used to be, where you did have a Cup team, albeit like Front Row Motorsports isn't a powerhouse Cup team, but I mean, they've made huge inroads in the Cup Series, and it's neat to see, like you saw, like the DuPont 24 car, there was a DuPont 24 truck, and it's neat to see in the, and for Loves as the company too, they've been putting their funds behind Front Row Motorsports and in NASCAR for a lot of years now.
A long time.
And they're getting another dog in the fight in an entry in the truck series that has obviously brought them a win already, but is going to get them a championship bid. And it's just another way for that company to experience everything that NASCAR can give them, and maybe bring them a championship too.
It's true. I mean,
if you're sleeping, or if Zane Smith isn't on your radar for a powerhouse driver this year, you're sleeping on him, because I think it does look like a good fit.
It definitely seems like it. And I think we kind of know that the 38 was, that whole team came to the truck series for Todd Gilliland. Todd's now moved up, and Zane feels like a very good pick for them if he is somebody that Ford wants to get behind. I feel that why this is important. Who drives the 34 right now is getting a little bit older. Mike McDowell obviously is in his mid 30s, and if he's going to move on, this feels like a slam dunk that Zane Smith is going to be the guy that's going to go into the 34, and it's going to be Todd Gilliland and Zane Smith in the Cup Series in the future. I would bet that that's more than likely a plan of theirs.
Wouldn't it be cool to see like a trade? You see Zane go to Cup, and then McDowell steps away and goes to the Truck Series or something like that.
I would love that.
That would be super cool,
because that's throwback. That's what the Truck Series used to be like. As much as people
and if Love stuck around with them, like they could still have a relationship.
And listen, exactly. And I'll shit on De Benedetto as well, but it is good. I like seeing Cup guys being in the Truck Series again. John Hunter was the same thing. Like, John clearly didn't want to be at Front Row Motorsports. He didn't want that option. Now, I would say if Kurt Busch is going to retire, he's probably a good guy to be in line for Toyota's seat, right? Because I don't think Brandon Jones is going to be the guy. Ty Gibbs, they could rush up there to 23-11, definitely, but it definitely feels like that's kind of their ideas, is that they have some. There's going to be a lot of change in NASCAR in the next couple of years, like a lot of it. You've got Harvick, you've got Busch as the biggest two names that are going to be retiring. Where I would love to see somebody else is Ryan Newman. I'm shocked that nobody picked him up. Nobody wanted to have him in their ride in Xfinity or.
I would have put Newman, or I don't know what his opinion of it would be, but to put him, he'd get more out of that 25 truck than Benedetto would any day. Newman could put a vehicle on his back,
and that's where I look
further than what is capable of, or than the vehicle's capable of.
And that's where I go and say, okay, an organization that really could use his help would be an up and coming team like that. That doesn't have a lot of experience, that's already gone through multiple drivers. They brought in Timothy Peters originally. That didn't last very long. I think that they have plans. I hope at least that Brittany Zamora will eventually move into the trucks, since she runs their late model program. I mean, I could see this being a placeholder for her, and I would love that, but they need help. And Matt, at the same time, he can probably offer it. But if, like I said, if this was a start of what his season is going to be like, it was not very impressive. And oddly enough, I really kind of wonder if this is going to be the last year that we see some names in this series. Johnny Sauter certainly seems like he might be on the end of his kind of time in the series. He'll be back and forth between GTG and Thor Sport. Matt Crafton, same thing. Like you say that every year, but I almost wonder. Ben Rhodes, they said he's 25 and he's been in this series for 7 years. Like, that's a long time for a young driver to be in the truck series, right? But is it come down? Like, I didn't notice. Did you notice that Bombardier was not his sponsor anymore?
Like, I didn't see it on the truck. No,
they didn't even mention that Bombardier wasn't back with him. So it could just be coming that like he doesn't have sponsorship. Right?
That's the thing too. It's not necessarily in some cases, the talent doesn't necessarily run out, but the funding does, that you don't get to develop any further. Or if he has the desire just to be that career series guy, you got to get somebody that believes in the vision too.
Like we love the truck series, man. I love it. And I feel like this season is going to be so good. Like it's going to be so good, but there's some stuff that you just got to look and go, like I'm really curious, man. I really do hope that next year that they finally make that step, and then they start taking these trucks back to where they belong in like South Boston and like the short tracks.
I think that's what you're saying in terms of the super speedway race format. I think that's how you fix it when NASCAR is looking at the way they do business as a whole. It's and the whole hierarchy pecking ladder system of the NASCAR tier system, you want to call it. I would say that, in my opinion, it's the best move for the truck series to put them back where they came from. Do they really have to be at Daytona with Xfinity and Cup? I say they do not.
No.
Like you said, like how many people do we know that are in Florida right now that have checked out? Like how many racetracks are down there? Like you said, put the trucks kicking off their season at a New Smyrna, that place would be filled.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
would you want to be at a stadium where 3/4 of the stands are empty, or go to a place, pack it, and then people that are watching are going to see it packed to the rafters? That's where I want to go to see my race.
And you're going to have bent fenders and whatnot, but you're not going to have 180 mile an hour barrel rolls and just like the craziness of the super speedway, just like the Clash in a small.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. So make it like that, but you have 47 trucks that want to enter, or whatever it was.
Heats.
40, maybe it was just 42 trucks that wanted to make the race. Okay. Well, they don't have to qualify on speed. They have to participate in a dual race, like a heat race.
Yes.
And you only do it for the first race of the season to make it the big deal. Then what it does, and then I'd say Xfinity, same thing. You put them on some other track, and because I know it's we always do stuff at Daytona. ARCA, same thing. Make the Daytona 500 a crown jewel event that we don't just go to Daytona with all of the developmental series.
I think it would make it a lot more special. Yeah.
Well, because listen, we can't do this year in and year out with having dual races for 4 cars. Like it's stupid. Why they're even running those races in the first place? No one was racing last night.
No.
Well, Joey Logano was, but no one for the most part was racing last night. It made no sense to run it for, let's be honest, if some stuff didn't happen, the MBM cars were not making the race. Like they were so off the pace. It wasn't going to happen, right? It just so happened that craziness did happen, but for the most part, it doesn't. So make the whole deal, make it a big deal, make it so that you get maybe an Xfinity team or a truck team that puts together a one-off entry for the 500. I feel like we used to get those all the time for the 500.
And I feel like the way, going that route would be the answer to that, where I feel like it would go back that way, where you would have like the dedicated truck team maybe try and put together something for the Xfinity race somewhere else or whatever. But and that's the thing too, like the budgets for super speedway packages versus a short track package. I mean, they don't have to be a finely tuned aerodynamic instrument for a short track race. There's just so many dollars and cents that
that's would just about.
Yeah.
It just, when you think about it, we said this, how many teams like DGM, for example, they don't have the budget of Joe Gibbs Racing. They don't. But can you imagine if they were able to, because you don't need to be the fastest car at a New Smyrna. You have to race well. You have to be good at driving.
And that's the name of the game, I thought, is racing.
And that's, I think, where if they were to do this, look how good the LA Coliseum race was, how excited people were. Can you imagine if they went to New Smyrna Speedway and they got to see that? Now, I'm not suggesting that Smyrna or Five Flags is the actual track of choice here, but
just insert track here. Yeah. Volusia, whatever. Like,
Hell, Volusia, start off on dirt, right? But
not discriminating.
No, of course not. And for God's sakes, get us some freaking help from Fox Sports Racing, because holy mother of God, can we talk about how awful the broadcast was tonight?
I feel like the fans are rising up here in Canada for that. Like,
man,
if America only knew the shit that we have to put up with just to watch these races, like, we're talking like over decade-year-old ads on loop, like on just
the shittiest fucking TV shows I have ever seen.
Yeah, the ones that weren't even that good to begin.
They were crap back then. I don't see one for Pastime. I liked Pastime, but you don't get to see. Was it called Pastime?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Presented by Castrol.
But no, we have to see this. They even got rid of the Formula E. They used to have Formula E commercials that drove me nuts, but now it's literally, they don't even have those anymore.
No, that's right. I forgot.
Adopt a Greyhound. They used to have those as well. Got rid of those as well. And now we're stuck with the same endless loop of the exact same fucking commercials from 11 years ago.
I bet that Greyhound's great grandchildren are dead now.
Clint is good, or not Clint, Kurt. Kurt is good.
Yes.
He and Kyle are going to be fantastic, and they're going to both be in the booth. I think Kyle's actually a little bit more exciting, but Kurt is very good.
I agree. Yeah, I think Kurt's very good. He's just drier.
He's very, very technical,
Mm-hmm.
which I never thought Kurt Busch of all the people would ever be like that. I
No,
thought
I
he'd
didn't
be like,
either.
but remember we used to say about Jimmy Spencer?
Yeah.
What he used to say about Jimmy Spencer used to crack me up. And
Yeah. Yeah.
this was an assault, and it was an assault from a has-been. I guess we could say he was a never been. And I
Yeah.
was like, hilarious, right?
Yeah.
Now I can say that I didn't like him back then, but Michael, Michael is not Daryl. I mean, he tries, and he's been doing this a long time. Something's just not working in that booth. It's either Vince or it's Michael, and I tend to go with Vince. I feel Rick and Phil, when they were in the booth with Michael, they could rein him in,
Yes.
rein him in,
Rein him in. Yeah.
so that he didn't get too much like Michael, because Michael likes to do what I do. He rambles, right?
They were a good booth team. You're right. When Rick Allen and Phil were together with him. Yeah.
They were, because Rick was not NBC Rick by then. He was Speed Rick, and he didn't have to force everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Phil would keep the excitement up with Michael. I still remember that call. Do you remember when Kyle dumped Ron Hornaday at Texas?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And how good Phil Parsons and Michael Waltrip were with displaying their disgust together.
Yes.
And it was like, this is a unified front, and they're not afraid to say bad stuff about. And that's where I feel like the booths now are so, they're not allowed to express how they actually feel.
Exactly. I don't know if that's them. I think there's so much TV money tied up in it that
you tell me that Michael really wanted to talk about Matty D 8 times in the broadcast.
Yeah, that's in his ear. That has to be in his ear.
That was in his ear, because he said the exact same thing during qualifying. He said it during practice, and he said it during the race. Michael used to have good observations. He used to be very humorous. It's like you said, it sounds so structured.
Yeah, it lacks a lot of depth to what the old broadcasts used to.
I'm trying to remember. Did Ray ever do the lead commentary? Ray Dunlap?
I don't know if he did it regularly. I think he did like stand-in stints or something. But I mean, he was also excellent too as a pit reporter. And
well, you know who we really needed, man, was Steve Burns, because he was the guy that was going to do this, and we lost Steve. And Steve was he was a
great play-by-play. Like, he was a great booth guy,
and he fed off so well with Michael. He fed off so well with whoever else was on tap. Really, he did such a good job.
Steve Burns was kind of the Mike Joy, Alan Bestwick in the making, for sure.
Very much,
for sure,
very much so. And
he would have been a great fit for the trucks, definitely.
Yeah, it sucks, and I look and I go, okay, well, Todd's pretty good. I think he's pretty good in the booth. If Michael's not in there, I think it's even better. Phil, I think, still has it. But I know like a lot of these guys, I think it's hard to remember. And a lot of us as fans tend to forget that these guys are old now.
Yeah. They don't want to
go travel. Yeah, they don't want to go travel. And so I think Phil and Larry were the same reasons, that they didn't want to go traveling around. But it's noticeable when those type of guys are in the booth, because it's what I think NBC lacks, is they don't have a very good transition team. They have Rick, who forces way too much. They have Steve and Jeff, who talk too much. And then they have Dale, who's just a fireball of energy and can't feed off of anybody because he competes with Rick. Rick used to be, if you go back and watch the Craftsman Truck series, Rick is so good because he's not screaming. He's just telling you how it is. And he would allow Phil and Michael to get all excited, right?
Yeah.
This broadcast today, it didn't, like, somebody threw it out there. I can't remember if it was William Richard or if it was somebody else, but they said they didn't really seem very interested in the race. I was like, you know what? They didn't really sound like they were really interested. And I don't know why. It didn't feel like it had that.
I wonder if deep down, maybe like they can't say it, obviously, maybe they feel like we do. They're coming to the seat. They know they're waiting until like at least the white flag lap or two to go that you're going to see them wadded up. And then and give Michael his props. I think that he posted before he headed to Daytona, this is his 47th year or something going down there. Like, that's impressive. And I mean, when we're talking about guys that are getting older and wanting to not tour as much, give it to Michael for not letting that fire go out, because it seems like Michael genuinely has a desire to beat the NASCAR drum as loud and proud as he can. And
to his detriment sometimes.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, God love him for it. But I mean, it is to his detriment sometimes. Yeah. And I think like the key to anything, and like we talk about with people in general, the key is chemistry. And it all, like, you remember when Rick Hendrick spent, like, it was such a huge story when Rick Hendrick spent the money on getting psychologists to read Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus, and I think at the time it was Letarte and Jeff Gordon, and like just going to that extent to pair a crew chief with a driver. They almost need to look at how they could do that in the TV booth and really kind of cover all the cross sections, because we saw the people shouting out yesterday when Mike Joy and Larry Mack were in the booth with Boyer. You got Mike's perfect commentary. You have the facts and Larry's great
technical
energy
side
that everybody and enough of Larry that it made everyone happy, not just like a 30-second snippet cut to Larry here and there. Him as a major contributor to the broadcast, and it was a nice mix. And you got a little bit of Boyer's zaniness. I think it was it was almost like Boyer did do a nice job of taking up Darrell's sort of mantra, and it was sort of an old school feel with Mike and Larry there with him.
Yeah, I think we've said it before. It is. We had somebody like Andy Lally in the booth last year for the Xfinity Series. We were so impressed with him because he articulated so well. He conveyed excitement. You need to have that. And I think it comes down to if somebody is excited or not. And if they're not generally excited about the product, you cannot tell me that they would not be excited to have some heat races going down at New Smyrna Speedway. You have 15 to 20 trucks in a heat race trying to battle to make their way into the race. Like, that would be one hell of a show. Absolutely amazing show. And then it puts it all in the driver's hands, which I think would be kind of badass. It's not coming down to who has the most money or who has a charter in the Cup Series or who had more points or whatever. Just make it like an old school. You race your way in, no matter how many points you have, no matter what your situation is, if you're past champion or not. If you don't finish in this top 15, if you don't finish in the top 10, you're not racing. And that's the way they should do it. Because I think that there's too much of this. I mean, we talked with Brian, man, and Brian said that there's so much catering. There's so much.
It's a very participation trophy sort of world now that you got to learn that not everybody gets a trophy.
Exactly. And every single one of those drivers deserves to race because they got sponsors. So give them the opportunity to at least be on the track and give the sponsor just that little bit.
Yeah.
Right? HRE, Chase Purdy, not fast enough to make the race. That car covered in sponsorship.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing for tomorrow. For the Xfinity guys, it's going to be the exact same thing. Give them the chance to race.
Absolutely.
But I'm gonna rate this, man, as this was a bit of a dud once again. I think we say this every time. Finish wise, I think it was a pretty blown call. I think it was a blown finish. They should have just ended it. And given our man Jason White a top 10 because he deserved it. He wheeled that truck all night long and was essentially wrecked twice, not of his own doing, which was giving lots of credit. That Chris Wright error, he missed it, and then Chris came down into him and knocked him sideways, and then Matt bumped him and moved him high, and it put him right into the path of Chris again.
Yeah.
And he took a hard shot. I hope he's okay. Hopefully, because that type of a right hand could easily have snapped his wrist or thumb or something like that. But so glad to see Jason out there running. It's so cool to have him in the series.
Yeah. And like in terms of the race itself, he did, like we said, he did a hell of a good job keeping that truck clean and staying out of trouble, kept in touch with the leaders and was up there like making passes and was poised for a great finish until that happened. So, I mean, we can't say enough about Jason looking after that Grayum Brothers truck and looking after a buddy's paint scheme for the whole scheduled distance. And then, as you said, through no fault of his own, just a product. I mean, he's been to that dance enough now that he knows that this is the nature of that beast. And odds are that, you're either going to finish or you're not.
33rd to 20th, still pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. We've seen those Grayum trucks. They're not, they're not the best, but what I've loved is seeing Villeneuve when he made the 500, Jason's right there celebrating, and Jason's become a real part of that Grayum team. And, I think we can definitely expect to see him in some more events for them. Obviously we'll see him in ARCA tomorrow. He starts pretty far back tomorrow, but
always rooting for him though.
Always rooting for him, and especially when he's driving for Andy Hillenberg, who's a legend in his own right. So Canada's got 2 more shots tomorrow. We've got technically 3, but we have to wait and see whether or not Alex Labbe will make the race. It doesn't look good. But
they got some work to do, yeah.
But if anybody can get speed out of a car, Mario Gosselin can. So
and Alex Labbe can sure drive him.
And he can sure drive. That's for damn sure. So it was a good race, but I think my top performer tonight, well, I got to give it to Jesse Little, actually, because I didn't expect that the O2 was going to be as fast as it was, making the top 10 shootout, and then him finishing the top 10 despite being involved in that last wreck. So I'm going to give Jesse Little a bit of a shout out there. Who would be your top performer?
I got to give it to Zane, man, because getting acquainted to his new team and going taken away. Yeah. I think that was, man, it's such a, I don't like talking bad about it, but I'm not trying to talk bad about it. It's just, it's so hard to watch that when you know what's coming. I mean, you just wish you could see like a good old
race
paint trading battle to the finish line. Yeah.
I wanted to go back, man. Those early 2000s races, you had racing to the finish like that. You go back, man, to 03 with Rick, I'm not going to say his name, the guy who won, who's creep up Quapple and Presley 3 wide to the finish. There's no wrecking there. That's pure racing to the finish. Carl Edwards getting a win, side-by-side finishes we've seen. It doesn't need to be complete wreck fests. It's just unfortunate that that's the product that we see. So hopefully tomorrow ARCA won't be, well, we know what ARCA is. I don't plan on watching that event. It's not normally very good. And then the Xfinity series. So we'll be here tomorrow.
Yeah, 5 o'clock, I believe, right? It starts. I hope I'm home in time for.
Not sure. Can't remember when it is.
Yeah, it's a late start, I'm pretty sure, anyways, which I'm quite thankful for that. If in the event I have to go to work tomorrow.
I hope not. It looks like it's settled down weather-wise. So
it's not doing anything right now. It's showing that we're going to get some snow here through the night. So fingers crossed that it misses us, but
hopefully it's just a little bit for you. Thank you if you've tuned in. Mostly everybody's going to be checking in tomorrow because we're doing this quite late, but we're going to hit the hay and get back for more racing tomorrow on the Stickers and Scuffs podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Cam K and Graydon Bunn signing off.